Then we'll get into the signal processing, which are the EQs, which are units. This is a third octave graphic equalizer. We'll get into the reverbs and delays that we'll use in recording or anywhere, and we'll also have an understanding of what reverb and delay is. And the compressors and limiters we'll also delve into. And then noise gates, how do we use them? And an expander is a different type of noise gate, if you've ever heard that word as well. Flangers and phasers, guitar players or keyboard players would understand this term right off the bat, and how it's used and how we could use it in other things. And then exciters, they're very often used in the recording studios, and what do they actually do? We'll also get into cabling. Everything we do in the recording studio, the cabling's all there. All you have to do is these nice, neat patch cords go from this point to this point. Well, in live sound, we have to physically go get the cable, unwrap the cable, plug it into each point, run it in a fashion that's semi-neat so people don't trip over it. And then at the end of the day, we got to wrap it all back up and put it back in a fashion that the next guy can get it back out without it being a ball of twine. And the book also covers test equipment, voltmeters, sine wave generators. This here is a sine wave generator. What it does is it creates a pure tone and a singular frequency, as you can see on this scope here. And it also varies. And it has a display like this is 386 hertz. We'll explain exactly what that means later on. And this is the oscilloscope, and this displays the signal electrically. The same signal that's in the air right now is displayed here. Sound pressure level meters. I actually have one. I carry mine with me all the time. And just basically lets you know what the volume is in a certain situation. Some places carry these, or some venues have these. It's like you can't mix your band louder than X number, and they will monitor this. The picture of one of the places we were at, they have a volume they have a volume limit where you cannot go over 110 decibels, and bands like Metallica just simply can't play there. And it's also a very helpful tool for other things. What I use it for is I work in television, and I work in a different television truck every day, and in order to mix the same level every single day of my life, I'll set a noise. This is called pink noise, and we'll explain what pink noise is later. It's basically just every single frequency at the same level. I'll set that at 0, or on the meter deflection of 0, and then I'll put my meter up and set it to whatever level I desire. So every single day I work at the exact same level. So because what happens is if you mix loud, it sounds different. Have you ever heard a kid or somebody say, "But it sounds better louder"? Well, it does, and we'll explain why it sounds better louder. We'll also get into a little bit of the electronics. I actually went to a tech school in high school, vocational school, where I studied electronics, and I use it every single day. I don't necessarily have to use it, and you don't have to know it, but the understanding of electronics, you know, knowing what happens to the signal at the end of this XLR after you plug it in, just gives you a total different perspective of what's actually going on. Grounding is a huge issue because that's a big factor in the buzz, and if you've ever set up a sound system and couldn't get rid of that troublesome buzz. And the mains power source, we take for granted that we plug all of our equipment into the wall and we expect it to work, and there's some aspects. I've been overseas where we work on generators, and I remember this one show we did, the diesel fuel that ran the generators, they just got the diesel fuel from the regular fueling station down the corner. Well, we ended up having to sift it through a nylon because it was so dirty, you know, and we take for granted just plugging into a wall and it's there for us. There's many situations where we do sound, live sound, where we have generators, and we'll learn a little bit about that. We'll delve into the loudspeaker again, and we'll talk about its directional properties. You know, you don't hear sound out of the back of the speaker, or you do, but it sounds totally different. We'll talk about that, and we'll get an understanding on that. And the bottom there, we'll talk about testing and equalization. The back of the book talks about MIDI. MIDI is mainly used for keyboard sequencing and sending keyboard signals to different keyboard modules to make different sounds. But we use MIDI in live sound actually quite often. A lot of the effects units, the reverb, delays, and choruses, and now even some of the digital equipment use MIDI as a means of communicating between pieces of gear. So I'm not going to spend a lot of time on that unless you guys are like really interested. Synchronization, for the people who work with the recording studio stuff, or anybody that's worked in the videotape world, you'll know a lot more about synchronization. And I'm probably not going to spend a lot of time on that. And then logarithms. Math is tough, but math is fun. Once I learned that math was fun and it wasn't this thing that I hated, it opened me up to be able to learn a lot of these formulas. We'll talk about several formulas pertaining to acoustics and sound, because you have to understand them, and you can't get past a certain point of understanding without at least understanding how the formula works. You don't actually have to punch in the numbers.